Dr. Nasser is here. We are discussing in this lecture about the Muslim reformers of India who played some important role for the purification of the society and to create the awareness amongst the Muslim community about Islam, about their rights, and about the revival of the Muslim political power in India. So today we are discussing about two important movements which are known as Wahhabi movement in India. One is Tehreek-e-Mujahideen, or the movement of jihad. It's also known as Jihad movement. It was launched in Punjab and KPK by Sayyid Ahmad Brelvi. And the second contemporary movement was launched in Bengal by Haji Shariatullah, and it also based on the thoughts of Wahhabism, but the difference between Tehreek-e-Mujahideen and Fraizi movement is very clear. Tehreek-e-Mujahideen was a military and violent movement. On the other hand, Fraizi movement was mainly focused on the performance of obligations of Islam and to organize the peasants and farmers against the landlords and their oppression in Bengal. So now we are starting from Sayyid Ahmad Brelvi. Sayyid Ahmad Brelvi was born in 1786 in the village of Raebareli that was near Delhi, and he died on 31st May 1831 at Balakot while fighting against the Sikh army of Ranjit Singh. During this span of his life, he went to Delhi. When he grew up, he went to Delhi to find a job. He couldn't find a job. Then he came back to the state of Tonk, where he joined the army of Amir of Tonk. The very interesting fact is Amir of Tonk was the ruler of a state of Tonk, but indeed he attacked the neighboring states to loot and plunder and collect the booty and wealth. So when Sayyid Ahmad served his army, the Amir of Tonk was known as a plunderer, as a looter. The Britishers in the beginning tolerated these kind of Nawabs who had small states in India, but according to Oliver Roy, the British signed a Treaty of Gwalior, and then they forced this type of Nawabs who looted and attacked the princely states of the located in their neighbors. So Amir of Tonk was one of them who signed the Treaty of Gwalior, and he tried to continue his rule in the state without an army. So his army was dispersed. Then Sayyid Ahmad came back to Madrasa-e-Rahimiyya and again joined his studies. When he came here, he came under the influence of the teaching of Shah Waliullah, Shah Abdul Aziz, and he was greatly influenced by the fatwa. Darul Harb means the home of war. According to Darul Harb, India was declared a home of war, and Shah Waliullah gave this verdict to his followers that they must have fought against the non-Muslim forces, or they had to migrate, but most of them they fought against it, and the other remained here. So another important point is he went to Arabia for the pilgrimage. He remained there for 2 years. He returned to India in 1812. During his stay in Arabia, he studied under Sheikh Abdul Wahab Najdi, and Sheikh Abdul Wahab is recognized as the founder of the extremist school of Wahhabism. So the Wahhabism that he learned at Madrasa-e-Rahimiyya, it was further developed and strengthened by the teaching of Abdul Wahab. And when he came back, so Sayyid Ahmad reached on important conclusions, and these conclusions are known as beliefs. His beliefs: number one, the society of Muslims in India has been contaminated by the non-Islamic rituals and rites, and he called it bid'ah or bidat, and he wanted to clear and eliminate all kind of these bidats from the Muslim society. So he believed if the Wahhabism is preached and the concept of Tawheed is emphasized, and then the society may be clarified from these concepts of Wahhabism to them. And number two, he believed that Shias were Rafzi or infidels, so he always preached and instigated his disciples to fight against the Shias and did not accept them as Muslims. So that was another very extremist viewpoint of Sayyid Ahmad Barelvi. And number three, according to Qadir Altaf, who writes in his book that he decided to launch war against Ranjit Singh, a Sikh ruler of Punjab and KPK and Kashmir, and he believed if this state is conquered, then Lahore, that had been the center of the power in the previous times, so he could capture it, and he might have the opportunity to establish an Islamic state. Altaf Qadir also criticizes him about his long journey from Tonk, Lucknow, then he reached to Ohud he came to Sindh, and where Pir Paghada and his Hur, they accompanied him, almost 3,000 soldiers from there, and from there he reached to Kandahar, and from Kandahar he came to Peshawar, and Peshawar he reached in 1826 at Akoda Naushehra, Akoda Khatak, the village of Khushal Khan Khatak. So the first battle that was fought by his disciples and followers, it was fought at Akoda in Naushehra. In this battle, the army of Sayyid Ahmad, that was known as Mujahideen, it won. So then some Sardar of Pashtun community and Yar Muhammad, the ruler of Peshawar, he decided to join his army. So he shifted his headquarters from Akoda after winning that war. He went to Peshawar, and Peshawar then he settled into the border areas that we used to call federal area, federal administrative territory of areas, FATA, and now they've been merged into Pakistan province KPK. He remained there for some years, and one of his close addies, Shah Ismail, who was the grandson of Shah Waliullah and Maulana Abdul Hai, they were his close son. And when he was in a tribal area of Pashtun region, he was poisoned by one of his servant. He survived, and then he was declared Amirul Mu'mineen, and the people took bay'ah on his bay'at on his bay'ah on his hand, allegiance on his hand, and he decided to move from Peshawar to Panjtar in Kashmir, because Yar Muhammad left him in the war and in the battle and betrayed him. One of the Pathan Sardar, Khudi Khan, said, it is the duty of the Sardars to rule the people and to decide about the government. He criticized that it is not the duty of the mullah or the religious ulama to become the rulers, according to Oliver Roy, who wrote in his book. So he came to Panjtar, where already, he was being awaited by the soldiers of Ranjit Singh. An important and interesting point is Ranjit Singh did not send any army, regular army. He sent just his paratroops. They were known as Nihangs. So they came there and they fought against him. So he fled towards Balakot. So at the Balakot, the last battle of this movement, or these Mujahideens were fought. And in this battle, Sayyid Ahmad Barelvi and his close friend and disciple Shah Ismail, they embraced Shahadat and they were buried there. And in this way, this movement came to an end. Maulana Abdul Hai, who had already, he escaped and went into the mountains. He tried to continue the movement for some time, but he couldn't do it. So this movement that was started in 1825, it was planned in 1826. The battle, he reached there. Then Battle of Akoda was fought. Ultimately, it ended in 1830, and it came to an end. Now, the question arises, if he wanted to liberate India and he wanted to create a Muslim state, why did he not start his movement, or why did he not challenge the British imperialism at that time? The Muslim scholar, Pakistani historian, Sheikh Muhammad Ikram, S.M. Ikram, writes in his book Mauj-e-Kausar that actually he decided that if Lahore and Sikh are defeated, then Lahore would become the most powerful place in cantonment and the center of the military activities. Therefore, he went to there. But Oliver Roy, who is a British historian, he explains that he launched this movement against the Sikh and Ranjit Singh with the disguised support of the British. The Nawab, Amir of Tonk and others who asked them that we could not join your army, but we could support you. But according to Oliver Roy, actually British were supporting these Nawabs, providing them financial and military assistance, and they further supplemented him. So this is a very interesting point. And then last part of this movement is, why was this movement a success or failure? This movement was a total failure. The reason of its failure is, number one, this movement was carried out by a specific sect, and that was a Wahhabi sect. So these Wahhabis who launched this movement, they were very, fanatics in their approach, because their leader Sayyid Ahmad disliked Shias, and he also decided to launch war against Shias and decided to launch war against the Sikh community. So his thinking and his extremism, his movement was not accepted by Barelvi Sunnis or the Shias. It was only 80,000 disciples of Sayyid Ahmad who purely belonged to his own sect. They were in this army, and they founded this movement and laid the foundation of this kind of non-state actors' wars against the state in subcontinent almost 3 centuries ago. Second is the soldiers who joined his army, who were known as Mujahideen. Majority of them were regular soldiers in the armies of the states. They were liquidated under the Treaty of Gwalior. So they came here not for preaching and fighting for Islam. They came here to seek the jobs and to collect the booty. So when they could not, achieve their aims and objectives of joining the army, they turned against him, and though they fought, but they couldn't succeed because they mostly. Number 3 causes of the failure of this: lack of planning. It was an emotional movement that was launched to achieve the target, and based upon a very specific religious thoughts, so it couldn't become a success. Fourth important reason for the failure of this movement is when he went into the Pashtun region, the Pashtun have and had their own specific culture. So these mujahideen started to get married with the ladies of the Pashtuns, and they also became very strict in the implementation of namaz and parda and on wheels, put on wheels and parda and many like the modern Talibans, they were very strong enough, and they did not allow the women to move independently without some kind of their relatives. So the Pashtun resisted him and they expelled him from KPK. So he came to, and there the Sikh were waiting for him. Then his emotional disciples had to face the regular army. Though Oliver Roy says that there were no regular army, but regular army waited for him, and they put him to an end. So this movement could not become a success, but Pakistani writers and Pakistani historians believe that he was one of the earliest Muslims during the British imperialism or British Empire, who created the awareness amongst the Muslim community about the revival of the Islamic spirit, about the revival of the Islamic obligations and purification of the society. He preached the Wahhabi school of thought and focused upon monoism or Tawheed, and he also declared bid'ah or heresies as a shirk, and he some go very far, and they say actually he was one of the earliest founder of Pakistan, but it's not so. He was not the founder of, at that time there were no concept of Pakistan. He was just an emotional mullah who wanted to take out a war against the Sikh, and he did it so. So this is an end of brief introduction of his services and all. Now we come up to the Fraizi movement. Contemporary to this, Haji Shariatullah, born in Faridpur near Dhaka. He belonged to very poor peasant family, and he got his Islamic education. He also went to Makkah for Hajj, and there he came under the influence of Abdul Wahab Najdi. So the common point among Sayyid Ahmad and his movement in Fraizi movement is the teaching and influence of Abdul Wahab Najdi on these two movements. The Fraizi movement was different in its nature, in its modus operandi. It was different from the movement of Sayyid Ahmad. Sayyid Ahmad took weapons, Sayyid Ahmad started military efforts, but Fraizi movements actually is different. Shariatullah asked his disciples, who were commonly known as Fraizi. Fraizi means the people who performed all the phrase of Islam. So Fraizi movement means the movement of the peasants, the movement of the disciples of Haji Shariatullah, who believed in, number one, that if they performed all phrase, namaz, and then fasting, Hajj, Zakat, they will become pure Muslims. Number two, he organized the disciples into small circles. They were called as Halqa, and among the Halqa there was one of his murid, and he actually played role. They were known as Khalifa of Haji Shariatullah, so they played very important role. So he organized the peasants against the landlords who were Hindus and British, and they cultivated indigo, but they did not pay proper salaries and wages to the Muslim peasants. Even in some areas, the Hindu landlords imposed tax on having a beard upon for the Muslims. So this was the time when he organized it. But when War of Independence started, he was, he had died because he died in 1840. After his son, Dadu Mian, Mohsen Ali, known as Dadu Mian, he further organized this movement. He made it very political and religious movement. His followers become more, organized, and the order of the Frazee leadership was that if there arose some kind of dispute among the Frazees, the case must not be lodged in the British court, and it was decided by the Khalifa or the head of the movement, the Dadu Mian, and his father. So this movement became very alarming when War of Independence broke out. Then they were arrested, and they were the Dadu Mian was arrested and put into prison, where he died in 1860. And in this way, this movement also came to an end with the passage of time. Now, was this movement a success or failure? This movement was more successful partially because it organized the peasants in Faridabad, in Memon Singh, in Dhaka, as well as some other districts of East Bengal. So they became very strong and very organized. They did not pay tax to the British government. They did not pay tax to their landlords or either Hindu or Britishers. They established their own code words. Through that they dealt each other, and they had their own courts. So they performed phrase, and this movement created awareness amongst the peasants or farmers of Bengal. It also created awareness amongst the Muslim farmers for their political, social, and economic and religious rights. But this movement was not a violent movement. So if we have the comparison of these two movements, Sayyid Ahmad movement was known as Tariq-e-Mujahideen, and that was carried out with the concept of military struggle and to establish a state. As far as concerned the Frazee movement, it was launched by Haji Shariatullah and continued under the leadership of his son Mohsen Ali, the Dadu Mian, and it was a political movement. So these two movements are known as Muslim Reform Movement, and these movements based upon the Wahhabi school of thought, greatly influenced by the Arabian religious scholar Abdul Wahab. So these movements were very popular amongst those Muslim community who believed in Wahhabism, but they were not endorsed by other sect of the Muslims in India. Therefore, these movements, although created awareness, although organized the Muslim community, but it could not organize the Muslim as a whole social fabric. It just remained confined to a specific sect of Wahhabis. So therefore, they could not become a success. When we incorporate these two movements as the forerunner of Pakistan freedom movement, its only importance is that actually almost 1 century before the creation of Pakistan, the Muslims were introduced the concept of resistance against the powerful. That's the crux of the debate. Keep on watching my channel Knowledge Gate for receiving more lectures about history, geography, and the subject of education and research. Subscribe Knowledge Gate on YouTube, press on the bell icon so that you may keep on receiving the latest videos.